welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and I appreciate y'all stopping by. Today I will be showing how I made these 6 simple and easy neutral fall decor DIYs. I hope y'all enjoy the video, and if you do, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and jump into DIY number 1. For this project I used one of these 16 by 20 oval canvases from Hobby Lobby. I started by using a flathead screwdriver and a pair of pliers to carefully remove all the staples from the back of the canvas. Once I had all the staples removed, I removed the canvas from the frame and smoothed out the canvas flat on the table. I then set the frame back on top of the canvas and took a pencil and traced around the inside of the frame. Next, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color ink to paint the inside of the oval. I then used Waverly chalk paint in the color truffle to paint the frame. After everything was dry, I trimmed down the canvas so that it was easier to work with and placed the frame on top, making sure none of the white canvas was showing, and used dabs of hot glue on each side and the top and bottom to tack the canvas in place. Next, I flipped it over and used a staple gun to reattach the canvas to the back of the frame, pulling it so that it was nice and tight and had a more permanent hold. I traced the quote, "And the leaves fell from the trees without regret," onto a piece of printer paper and used a regular pencil to shade the back of the paper so that I could transfer the words to the canvas. I then placed the paper onto the canvas where I wanted the words and used Scotch tape to hold it in place. I used a pen and traced around the letters to transfer them to the canvas. Here is how it looked once the words were transferred. I used a white paint marker to fill in the words. To decorate the canvas, I used the leaves out of these 2 laser cut icon packs from Dollar Tree. I placed the leaves around the words to fill in the empty space, and once I was happy with the way it looked, I used small dabs of hot glue to secure them in place, and that's it for this one. I am thrilled with the way this canvas turned out. I think it's simple yet beautiful and a perfect reminder of fall. Moving on to DIY number 2. For this project, I used one of these large paper mache pumpkins that I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby and some of these 3/4 inch half wood beads from Amazon. I placed 8 of the wood beads down each section of the pumpkin using hot glue to secure them in place. I started up next to the stem and worked my way down towards the bottom, trying to keep about a thumb's width between each of the beads. Here is how the pumpkin looked once I had all the beads glued into place. Next, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and painted the pumpkin with 2 good coats. I then used Krylon antiquing wax in the color dark vintage and dry brushed the entire pumpkin, including the stem. If I happened to get too much wax on any one area, I used a paper towel to wipe off the excess, and if it was still a little too dark, I went back in with more plaster colored paint. I continued this process until I was happy with the way it looked. To finish up this project, I used this brown leather leaf that I had in my stash and some of this medium brown colored suede lace from Hobby Lobby. I used a small pair of scissors to help pull the lace through the top of the leaf and then wrapped the lace around the stem of the pumpkin a couple of times and tied it in a knot. I then cut off the excess lace and this one is finished. I am super happy with the way this pumpkin turned out. I am loving the look of neutral colors with leather accents for this upcoming fall season. On to DIY number 3. For this project, I used one of these glass cheese shakers from Dollar Tree and removed the lid. I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and gave the glass 2 good coats. Once the paint was completely dry, I took a finger sander and sanded the raised areas on the glass to give it a distressed look. Next, I took some jute and wrapped it around the top of the glass twice and tied it in a knot, leaving the tails long. I then used 3 of these small wooden beads from Amazon and placed 2 beads on one of the tails and 1 bead on the other. When I was happy with the placement of the single bead, I tied a double knot underneath it to keep it in place. I then repeated this step on the other side with the 2 beads, letting them hang just a little lower than the single bead. Next, I cut off all the excess jute. To decorate this vase, I used one of these fall picks that I got on sale at Hobby Lobby and some of these cream-colored berries that I had in my stash. I bent the end of the fall pick and placed a wadded-up paper towel into the bottom of the vase for some filler and then placed the pick inside. I then randomly placed the cream-colored berries into the arrangement, and this one is finished. I love how this fall arrangement and vase turned out. It's small and simple but gorgeous, and since it's small, it can fit in my decor just about anywhere. I want to take a second and talk about today's video. It's part of the Falling into August open playlist hosted by Chantel from Crafty Hints, Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY, and Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun. All 3 of these ladies are talented crafters and have some amazing DIY projects. So if you haven't checked them out yet, I highly encourage you to do so. I just know you're going to love their channels. I'll link their channels in the description box below, as well as leave a link to the playlist so you can go over and get more fall decor inspiration once you finish my video. With that said, let's jump into DIY number 4. For this project, I used 2 of these long wooden signs that I picked up on clearance at Hobby Lobby. I used wood glue and applied it along the top edge of one of the signs, then placed it up against the bottom edge of the other sign in order to create one larger sign. Next, I took a staple gun and stapled the 2 signs together along the seam on the back side. I then used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and painted the entire sign with one good coat. Once the paint was dry, I used a finger sander and distressed around the edges and along the middle seam until I was happy with the way it looked. I also used 3 of these large 21-inch ruler paint stir sticks from Lowe's. I cut 3 pieces that are 6 and 7/8 inches, 3 pieces that are 3 inches, and 1 piece that is 2 and 5/16 inches. I used Rust-Oleum wood stain in the color American Walnut to stain the backs of the paint sticks that did not have the ruler marks and the sides. Once the stain was dry, I placed the paint sticks on the front of the sign to make the F and both L's of the word fall and used hot glue to secure the pieces in place. Next, I used some of these 3/4 inch black specialty tacks from Walmart. I hammered 2 tacks in each end of each piece of the letters so that it looked like the nails are holding them in place. Some of the sticks split a little bit, but I'm totally okay with that and feel like it adds to the rustic homemade charm. I did flip the sign over and cut off the ends of the tacks that were sticking out the back. Then to finish up this sign, I used this large rusted metal leaf that my husband kindly cut out for me. I used Gorilla Glue Super Glue for a more permanent hold and some hot glue for an immediate hold to attach it to the sign between the F and the first L, and this one is done. I love how this sign turned out. I love the simplicity of it and the rustic feel that the wood, tacks, and metal give to this piece. Moving right along to DIY number 5. For this project, I used one of these pumpkin shelf sitters from Dollar Tree. I started by using a heat tool to remove the bow and excess glue from the stem. I then used a sanding sponge to scuff up the front of the pumpkin and to lighten up the letter M. Next, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and painted the entire pumpkin with about 3 good coats. Then I used this Hello Pumpkin quote that I traced out on some regular printer paper. Again, I used a pencil to shade in the back side of the words so that I could transfer them to the pumpkin. I taped the template to the front middle section of the pumpkin and used a pen to trace the words and transfer them. Next, I used a black fine-tip Sharpie paint marker to fill in the words. I then used some jute to create a small tassel by wrapping it around 4 of my fingers about 8 times. Once I had the tassel created, I unraveled each strand of jute. This is how it looked once I had all the strands unraveled. I used this wire brush from Dollar Tree and brushed out the bottom of the tassel until it was nice and smooth. Next, I used a pair of scissors to trim up the end of the tassel so that it was even. I then cut a piece of jute that is 11.5 inches long and wrapped one end with tape and tied a double knot in the other. I also used 14 of these small wooden beads from Amazon. I strung 12 of the wooden beads onto the jute, then placed the tassel onto the jute and strung the last 2 beads. Here is how it looked once I had the beads and tassel on the jute. Then, to finish up this quick little project, I used a small dab of hot glue on the back of one side of the pumpkin to attach the side of the jute with a knot. I then applied another dot of hot glue on the back of the opposite side of the pumpkin to attach the other end of the jute, making sure to leave enough slack so that the beads and tassel would sag a bit on the front of the pumpkin. I cut off the excess jute and this one is finished. I think this one turned out adorable. I love the look of the handwritten words and the neutral colors of this pumpkin. And last but not least, DIY number 6. For this project, I used one of these 15.6-inch foam wreath forms from Hobby Lobby and some of this brown faux leather also from Hobby Lobby. I started by cutting 6 strips of the leather that were 1 inch wide. Then, using hot glue to secure the ends in place, I wrapped the entire wreath form with the leather strips. I wrapped the leather as tight as possible without a lot of overlapping, using hot glue as needed to hold the leather in place. As you can see here, there are a few small gaps between the leather, so I took some of this 4mm braided leather cord in distressed brown from Amazon and used hot glue to attach it to the back of the wreath and wrapped it around the entire wreath, making sure to cover up all the seams and the gaps between each of the wraps. To decorate this wreath, I used 2 of these cream and brown floral picks, 1 of these cream brown and green floral picks, and 2 of these cream grass floral picks, all of which I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby. I created a swag with the florals and used some floral wire to attach all of the stems together in the middle. Then, to attach the swag to the wreath, I used another small strip of the leather and hot glued it to the center of the swag and around the back side of the wreath form. For a little added security and more decor, I cut a wider piece of the leather and hot glued it on top of the swag and tightly tucked in the sides using hot glue to hold them in place, and this one is finished. Y'all, I couldn't be happier with the way this wreath turned out. I love the rustic, worn look the leather gives to this piece and how it makes the cream-colored florals pop. Here is one final look at all of today's fall decor DIYs. I absolutely love how all these projects turned out and cannot wait to add them to my decor this year. Which one of these projects is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. It was a tough choice for me, but I think I'm going to have to go with the leather fall wreath. Don't forget to go check out the Falling into August playlist, as well as the channels of today's wonderful host. All of the links will be in the description box below. I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by today, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, as it really does help me out here on YouTube. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? Click that button and stick around for a little while. I have tons of fun projects on the way. I'll see y'all next time.